Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today we are going to talk about one of the most underrated squadrons in all of tabletop gaming and in Star Wars Armada. Today it is the Scurrg H6 bomber. This is definitely an underrated ship that does not see enough play. I have probably count on one hand the number of times I have ever seen anyone bring the Scurrg in a list against me personally, but I am curious for those of you watching, how often do you play against Scurrgs, or have you run a Scurrg yourself? Because it is kind of underrated. I think it flies under the radar, and a lot of people don't pay it a lot of attention. And I'll talk about why I think that is. But first, I do want to plug the channel a little bit again. If you guys are new here to the channel, I do talk a lot about Star Wars and tabletop games. We do giveaways all the time. We are kicking off a brand new giveaway right now. It's for a $25 Amazon gift card. You just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my videos. I do these quite often. They'll run for about 2 weeks. And you just have to subscribe, leave a comment, let me know your thoughts on the Scurrg H6 bomber, and what are some other squadrons that you think are probably underappreciated or undervalued, that kind of fly under the radar, not enough people run, and you think maybe they should take notice of. This is a very interesting squadron, and I used to have a lot of success running these in the early days of Star Wars Armada. This is a ship that came in the Rogues and Villains pack. I think that's one of the big reasons why it doesn't see that much flight, because frankly, you only got one in that pack. And compared to B-Wings, for example, which are, if you're looking for Rebel bombers, B-Wings have always provided a fantastic option. Plus, they're pretty cost-effective for what they do, and they're an awesome-looking ship. And I mean, what's not to like about B-Wings? B-Wings are one of my favorite ships in the entire Star Wars universe. So it really asks the question, why the Scurrg? Well, let's talk about the Scurrg a little bit. It's 16 points. It has Bomber, Grit, and Heavy. It has 3 Speed, 6 Hull, 2 Blue against Squadrons, and a Blue and a Black against ships. Now that's an awful lot on its own, but let's break that down a little bit. Bomber, of course, is important. Again, it has Bomber in the name, so it kind of has to have Bomber. It's going to help it attack ships. Grit is an important thing. It allows you to still be activated by a squadron command and move away. And then, of course, move away and then do your bombing command. This is a ship that's usually going to want to be activated by squadron commands. There are other rogue bombers out there, but again, this is a ship that is rolling 2 dice, a black and a blue. So it's just a very effective bomber. Anytime you have a bomber that rolls more than 1 dice, that's really awesome, especially in the world of really nasty ships that are out there that like to cause you to re-roll dice because they are terrible, and we're not happy. Basically, it's the point defense ion cannons really mess with a lot of stuff. So the more dice you have, the more double hit scenarios you're going to have, and somebody forcing you to re-roll is not going to be able to do quite the good of a job that it would have otherwise done. So, what it lacks is anti-squadron firepower, and in fact, it only has 2 blue dice against other squadrons. That is certainly a weakness, but it's also got a speed of 3 and hull of 6, which means it's going to stick around for a little while. Now, I'm only talking about the generic Scurrg in this one. I'm not talking about Havoc, because Havoc is significantly more expensive. The Havoc squadron is a 21-point squadron, and I don't think you really get as much. I mean, it's got a cool critical effect, but I'm just talking about the generics here. And I want to compare it to the B-Wing a little bit, because the B-Wing, I think, is the closest ship that it would be compared to. And again, the B-Wing is by far the more popular Rebel bomber. But why? Well, it's cheaper, and it still rolls 2 dice against ships. It's probably all people really need to know. People will have bought Rebel fighter squadrons. They're going to have at least 2 B-Wings. Most people are going to have at least 4, and that's a nice round number. Because again, a lot of people who like to run bombers will have picked up multiple Rebel fighter packs. They'll probably have some X-Wings, some B-Wings, and some things like that. So the B-Wing's biggest weakness is one of the things that the Scurrg is able to kind of wipe the floor with it on, at least from a manner of speaking, is that the B-Wing's only speed 2. The Scurrg has an extra speed. The Scurrg also has an extra hull, letting it stick around for a little bit longer. Scurrg costs 2 more points, and it does have heavy, and is not as good against enemy squadrons. Both heavy and the lack of a blue die on the squadron compared to the B-Wing do make the Scurrg have a negative. Plus, it's 2 more points. However, I want to point out that the fact that it has heavy and the fact that it has 1 less die against squadrons, I don't think personally that that's a very big deal. I think this is not a squadron that you bring to engage enemy squadrons. This is not a squadron that you bring to do combat against enemy squadrons. If that's happening, then something has gone wrong. This is a kind of like a min-max bomber, in my opinion. You're paying a little bit more, but you're getting a higher speed, which is incredibly important. You have a little more hull to help you stick around longer. You still get that 2 dice, and you have grit, which is really the most important part that makes the Scurrg stand aside from the B-Wing. We're seeing, a lot more. I've just seen a lot more cases lately where, a single TIE interceptor wants to kind of, jump right into your whole squad ball and haha, you all have to attack me now and I have counter, so blah, 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 kablamo, 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 and I just screwed up your entire thing. And grit is so important for that because it allows you to still move. And combined with the fact that it has a higher speed, a speed of 3, is super important. That means it can move, and it can move away far and can get to a spot where it can deliver its payload. It's a much, much better squadron for what it does. The B-Wing, while it certainly does a great job, and it's also 2 points cheaper, is a little bit kind of mismanaged in a way for Star Wars Armada, because it's very, very slow, and it's a kind of a squadron that needs to be going after ships, so it needs to be a little faster. It's got this slightly, like, it can tie up enemy squadrons, and it has 3 blue dice against enemy squadrons, making it a little bit versatile. And while that's not terrible, you usually aren't bringing all bombers. Usually you're bringing a little bit of a diversified squadron list. And I think one of the biggest reasons people are overlooking the Scurrg is because they probably don't have very many. If you've only got one of these things in your collection, you're probably not thinking about making a build based around them. But in the wake of Armada not being printed anymore by Asmodee, and people kind of going into this 3D printed kind of mindset, where having the official models is going to become less and less important over time, I think that's going to stop being a barrier. Like, oh, I couldn't buy 5 copies of Rogues and Villains, which, like, for example, I did because I was crazy. It won't really matter in the future if somebody bought 5 copies of Rogues and Villains or not. They could just run, however many Scurrgs they want. Or if you're playing on, like, Tabletop Simulator or something like that, you could also do that. So again, let's not get caught up on the fact that it was just one in a particular build. So let's look at, speaking of builds, let's look at a build that I put together here. I'm using Ryan Kingston's Star Wars Armada Fleet Builder, armada.ryankingston.com. And this is a build that is using 4 Scurrgs. 4 Scurrgs, 2 X-Wings, a VCX, a Y-Wing, and Jan Or. The Y-Wing really just because I had 10 points left over. But this is running 4 of them. I have 6 bombers in total. I've got 4 Scurrgs, 2 X-Wings, which technically do have bomber. Jan, which is helping the X-Wings tank stuff and stay alive if somebody does get some shots on the Scurrg. Well, they have 6 health. They'll probably survive for quite a while. We've got Jan's beautiful things. Beautiful braces that are going to help. We've got the VCX to help get a little bit of, well, for some objectives, but also for for relay in case we have some struggles trying to get things activated. Here's what we're running. GR75 is crucial. We're running Bomber Command Center and Bright Hope to help it stay alive. And we have Torin Far on there. So we're getting both a reroll for Bomber Command. We're getting a blue die reroll. That's going to work perfectly with a Scurrg because, again, we've got a blue and a black. So that's very important. We've got a Nebulon with Yavaris. Now, Yavaris was nerfed a little bit, but it's still pretty good. If we do Flight Commander, Fighter Coordination Team, put Heavy Fire Zone on the Nebulon to give it some anti-squadron. Again, we don't want our only anti-squadron abilities to just be like these X-Wings trying to take out all of the enemy fighters. We don't want the Scurrgs to have to deal with the enemy fighters as much either. So again, the VCX can do some of that. Janors can do some of that too. We can do a little bit of that. We can have the assault frigate here activate when we've got flight controllers. So the assault frigate can activate the X-Wings, the VCX, and Janors, and get that, try and deal with the enemy squadrons that way. You can also protect those X-Wings. We've got Jan here who can protect the X-Wings. We've got Gallant Haven that can protect the X-Wings. We want to try and, make sure we're engaging kind of close to the station if possible. So this way our X-Wings can stay alive for as long as they can. We also have Jaina's Light in this build as well because it's just a good objective hunting ship, and it allows us to get a little bit of just a flexibility. It's just a flex play. If we had a little more points, we could put TRC on it. But this is kind of a whole lot of different things going on in this build. Now we do have a lot of squadron activations here. We've got 2 here, we've got 2 here, we've got 4 here, and then we've got an extra one here if we need it. So we have a lot of ability to be doing squadron commands. Typically with Yavaris, you'll take a squadron token very early, and then you can also move your squadrons a little bit more with a fighter coordination team. So that's just a sample build that you can do. It's something that I came up with, and it's a way to kind of flex the power of the Scurrg a little bit. It's still 9 squadrons. It's still quite a bit. But I want to hear some of your thoughts, what you think about the Scurrg H6 bomber. First debuted in Star Wars Starfighter, also showed up in the old Sony Online Entertainment game Star Wars Galaxies. It was in there as well. And it also exists in Star Wars X-Wing as well. So again, the Scurrg is in quite a few places, but still not too many. But in Star Wars Armada, at least, it is a very capable bomber. Grit being a massively important keyword on it, allowing it to move away. Basically, you will force your opponent to have to commit 2 fighters to lock it down. So if you spread your Scurrgs out such that one fighter cannot engage 2 of them simultaneously. And again, that's why we have multiple carriers. That's why we're doing things like having, the expanded hangar bay, and also having things like the VCX with relay, so we can spread them out a little bit. That's the beauty. Spread them out a little bit. Have multiple carriers that can activate them, and your opponent will have a very hard time locking them down. And since they're speed 3, you can move them to a safe spot. You can move, if somebody comes in, they've got TIE fighters in the front, you can then get, speed 3, you'll have a much better chance of being able to move to a spot where they can engage. It's also really good late game when your opponent has slow ships that wouldn't maybe otherwise be able to outrun B-Wings. Speed 3 is just, it is a sweet spot, and it really, it makes a big difference with trying to keep up with ships and trying to drain those shields and get that hull damage on there. Let me know some of your thoughts on what we talked about today in the comment section below. Plus, you can check out the links in the video description below. Jump in our Discord. Keep talking about Star Wars Armada. The game is still going strong. It is alive and kicking, probably in one of the best states it's been in a very, very long time. Super fun game. If you want to learn more, check out some of my other videos and links in the video description below. I will talk to you later. I want to thank you all so much for watching. Big thanks to my patrons. You guys are out of this world and help make this whole channel possible. I will talk to you later. May the Force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes, and always wash your socks.